Facing your fears can be a really therapeutic way to manage your feelings towards a situation, but only in a controlled setting, as to not do more harm. What if you could fight phobias while deck building and playing a digital card game? Released in 2021 on PC and Nintendo Switch, Neurodeck is described as a psychological roguelike deck builder. The premise is to face and battle phobias using powers contained in cards. If you're new to deck builders, you pretty much collect cards with different abilities and create a custom deck that can be used in many situations to defeat almost any enemy. There are some cards that can heal a player or regain stamina, and you can play or make moves depending on how much energy you have each turn. Opponents can use their own decks and play cards that make fights a little tougher, or completely change the direction a fight is going. In Neurodeck, it's made very clear on the home screen that we'll be diving deep into a subject's personalities and psyche, and we'll be face to face with their biggest phobias. The ultimate goal is to defeat them all and allow the subject to heal. We start with Lei and get to pick an emotion to start learning about. The emotion we pick will influence which cards we start with in our deck. Further into the game, there are different characters to unlock and emotions to explore. There's a trail at the top of the screen which shows levels or significant moments in Lei's life that we'll see, with our stamina and sanity under her portrait. Our current deck is shown below these stats, so we can always keep track of what cards we have and how well Lei is doing mentally. We can view traits that we've chosen by completing surveys. We can unlock a meta-analysis that focuses on certain body parts and gives us bonuses. And look through a handbook that lists all the different phobias we might encounter in the game and what abilities they have. We start at the very beginning, which I've heard is a very good place to start, and we choose how Lei begins her life. Which traits we decide she has gives us small bonuses. Then we pick some of her life choices, between her answering a survey or asking a teacher for help at school. This leads us to a snippet of a story where we can learn more about Lei's life and how she feels. We can also transform cards here, replacing one in our deck with something we might prefer or something stronger. We meet our first phobias, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. We pick one and it's time to fight. Card fight. Mind focus is used to draw a card, but at the cost of stamina. Each card uses action points in order to be played, and they're shown on the left side. Once mind focus has hit 0, our turn is over and the phobia begins play. Our hand is shown to us and we can pick whichever card we want that will help defeat the phobia. Once it's gone, we're given a new card to add to our deck. This is basically the entire game. Make decisions in Lei's life, pick traits that alters how she copes with card fights, choose what kind of personality she has, and gain and upgrade cards. The phobias get stronger the further into Lei's story we go, so later on a little more strategy is needed. The other genre this game uses is roguelike, which means once you're defeated, you need to start over from the beginning. But you keep some perks and upgrades depending on how far through the last run you got. This enables players to get stronger after every defeat, and also learn from their past playthroughs to create a new strategy for the next run. Ultimately, we all have gone through a whole journey of healing alongside Lei, and once at the end, she will have conquered her phobias. Deck builders usually need a certain amount of strategy to play and win. You have to balance high energy cards which hit hard, with low energy cards that can offer support or weaker attacks that may help in the long run. They also encourage forward thinking and planning ahead, which can be used in everyday life. The gameplay itself can show people how difficult it can be to recover from mental health issues, when phobias throw out negative status effects that can hinder a player's strategy or change it completely. Life isn't as simple as playing every card in your deck without problems or things that might throw us off. So we need to adapt and change up the way we approach situations, and not be too scared of roadblocks. The feeling of defeating a phobia can also give a player confidence in their next fight. Knowing they won using all the coping tools they had at their disposal can be empowering. If I can do this in game, maybe I have the ability to do the same in real life. Again, the game isn't giving mental health advice, nor is it supposed to be used in place of professional help, but it does plant a seed that some people might use to better their own selves or situations. When reading the reviews, the biggest negative mentioned was the game's focus on mental health is only really a costume of sorts, and that it didn't actually dig into fundamentals of coping mechanisms or therapy. I understand the disappointment in these reviews, but at the same time, I don't think a game that's seriously accurate to real-life mental health would be popular or approachable to players. Others said the cards didn't really make sense for fighting phobias, or descriptions didn't line up with what the cards did. Reading some of the cards, it felt like their meanings were more symbolic at times, but as it wasn't consistent, they could come off as confusing or just be missed entirely. A big opinion, which I agree with and understand, is the approach to the theme of the game. Chris pointed out that
it seems to come from a privileged, ableist point of view, meaning the people behind the scenes probably didn't experience mental illness, or only see the superficial effects of it. This makes the game suddenly feel like a simulation of what people think mental illness is like, rather than understanding the highs and lows, or how debilitating conditions can be.
He also mentioned there was no real research done, such as reading articles or consulting mental health professionals. So this game shouldn't be taken too seriously as an accurate understanding, or one that has come from experience of mental illness. I think some people wanted this game to offer guidance as how to deal with phobias, rather than be a game that lightens the mood when approaching the subject. There were complaints about therapy not being mentioned, or how the game seems to poke fun at mental illness, which could be enough to turn players away from wanting to try the game. Though this is a game that doesn't offer mental health advice, it does give a player the feeling of control and strength when defeating phobias. Being dealt a hand of cards that might not be great, then upgrading and transforming them as you get stronger can really give people a sense of understanding on how to cope. After each fight, you get rewarded, and sometimes that's enough to encourage people in real life. Not to take on their phobias head-on alone, but take a small step towards getting strong enough to ask for help or want to change. I like the fact that this was made in the form of a deck builder, because as in life, we don't always get to pick the hands we're dealt. We can only try our best to adapt, and use our cards to cope in different situations. Level up the ones that work for us, or sometimes take a step back and rebuild our decks from the bottom up. Neurodeck doesn't offer psychological help, and it doesn't claim to be a cure-all for mental health issues, but it does put a playful spin on fighting phobias, gives a player control over their decisions, and shows what kind of difficulties can be put in a person's way when they're trying to heal. It can be very hard to weigh up pros and cons for games like these, as the subject needs to have a very delicate touch. In making mental health approachable and fun, it may borderline on mockery, as some serious feelings someone has could be reduced to an ability on a card that can be picked up or put down at any time. So don't play this game with the expectation of all your problems being fixed, or come away being able to defeat any phobia that comes at you. Look at it as more of an example of how mental illness can affect someone, and how hard they have to work just to cope. Life will throw random stuff at us, but we have the ability to decide which cards we want to play, no matter how bad our hand looks at first. This was fun. Let's do it again sometime. And if you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like down below.